Hello, everyone. This is Stephen McNallen with another episode of God's Folk and Destiny. Whose gods? Our gods and goddesses, the holy powers of the north, led by Odian and Frigga. Whose folk? Our folk, born of ancient Hyperborea, now spanning the globe with eyes on the stars. Whose destiny? Our destiny, which we will win by hard work and mighty deeds. Honor, sovereignty, well-being, and the existence of our people forever. So shall it be. Tonight, Troy Wisehart is many things: a poet, a performer, and an author, among others. Perhaps most essentially of all, a seeker on the Odinic road of personal transformation. We'll talk about his ongoing projects, to include his really interesting new book, which I just got in the mail yesterday, starting in just a couple of minutes. But first, you know what comes next, don't you? Support this work by subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing with others. It is our task to change ourselves and to change the world in which we live. And sharing this podcast is a tiny step in that direction. Okay. Well, last time it was a little rough. As you know, we didn't have power that was adequate to meet the task. We had a big storm rolling in back where producer Dave Martell lives and bumped us off. But we're back because we're stubborn. So, with that said, let's welcome Troy. Troy, welcome to God's Folk and Destiny.
Thank you, Steve. Always good to talk to you.
We don't do that often enough. It's quite rare these days, but It's great when it happens.
Yes, sir.
I've still got my tank top version of the shirt you're wearing that I got back up in Washington when we were up that way long ago, a few years back. And I wear it regularly to the gym. So, giving a little bit of broadcasting going on there.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, Troy, just to start with, let's go back to, quote, the beginning. Tell me a little bit about how you came to follow this path. How did you step out of being just another person with other interests that were in the front of your mind and picking up this considerable load? How did you get there?
Well, it was in 1999, April. I was living in Phoenix, Arizona with my old friend Dave Taggart. We were roommates, and one day he came up from downstairs where his room was with a piece of paper, and he had printed something out from the internet, and he gave it to me to read, and it was "What is Ossetrue" by Stephen McNallen. And I had never seen the word Ossetrue or had any idea what any of it was. But as I was reading that essay, it was as if I was reading about myself. And it really spoke to me. And of course, as a teenager, I was an avid Conan reader. So this was like fit right into everything that I thought was very cool. And that's what started me on the path. And then we discovered that we were in the vicinity of the Ossetrue Alliance in Valgard Murray in Prescott, or Payson. And we attended some of his rituals, and of course, inspired immediately to form our own kindred, the Falcon Kindred, because we lived in a neighborhood that had a hill called Falcon Hill. So that's where we took our name from. And then we went up to Ogden, Utah, to All Thing 19, where you were. I met you, and Valgard was there, of course, and a whole bunch of other people. And I think I told you before, when I was called into the hall there to speak to everybody, you and Valgard, Papa Bear Smith, and a bunch of other people, it was like I felt like I was in the presence of somebody like Led Zeppelin or something. I was really blown away. It was a great experience.
I love that comparison.
It doesn't get much heavier than that.
Right, right. Well, I think I'm sorry. Go ahead. You had more to say.
Go ahead.
Okay, it's interesting you mentioned Conan and the Robert E. Howard stuff, because I have mentioned that several times on this podcast as something that was formative for me. And when I found out that Robert E. Howard lived and wrote 50 miles from the town I was born in. And it's sort of a Texas thing a little bit, I guess. But yeah, it's that adventurous, exciting, outward-reaching, conquering, lusting, living large kind of existence that I think is appealing to so many of us in many ways.
Well, and you can't find a greater hero than Conan. His indomitable will, no matter what the situation is, his never considers giving up. I mean, he's just like a great hero, and his god Crom is, of course, comparable to Odin. It's sort of interchangeable, except for Odin, I think, is a little bit more benevolent than Crom, which isn't that much.
Yeah, that's not saying much, is it? No. There was a deity that was connected with the grave mounds that was Crom something something.
Right.
And I know a lot about that was the Celtic material particularly, and of course Howard kind of rode in between the Celtic and the Teutonic stuff, but it's all the same essential material. It's all that northern Hyperborean kind of impulse. And I'd like to share with our watchers the dedication to your book. Let me give them a quick cover shot of your book, because guys, I got this in the mail the other day, and it's really, really interesting. I'm liking it a lot. It's giving me some real perspectives on my own work. So you guys may want to check that out. The title, which you can't too easily read on this, is Rise, Runes and well, okay. Had a little bit of a glitch there. Nothing big, but we're going to kind of come back from that. Let's see. We got through the piece by Finolf, I believe, which talks about the fact that we all fall and the fact that we all rise. And as he put it, we create new things. We flood the world with passion and art and action. And that's the kind of attitude we've got to have. Even when the electronics doesn't work, even when people don't like us, we got to keep doing this passionate act of creation and becoming and self-overcoming. So, that's Steve's speech. But
what he's saying there is, we create things and we fill the world with action and passion. We don't concern ourselves with what other people are doing. We concern ourselves with what we're doing, and the whole objective is to build something powerful and beautiful. You don't have to worry about what anybody else is doing. You have to worry about what you're doing. If you don't like the way things are, build something. You don't have to worry about destroying what somebody else has. You need to create what you want for yourself. Otherwise, you're just wasting your energy. You're wasting your time. You're not going to accomplish anything. If you're all about negativity and destruction, what have you got to show at the end of your life? You haven't built a beautiful temple. You haven't created a fantastic organization, built a powerful tribe of loyal brothers and sisters, families that are knit together by their oaths and by their friendship. you've got nothing.
Exactly. If you worry too much about what other people are doing, you get bogged down. It's like glue. It's like mud. It's like concrete. It's like sludge that keeps you from realizing your own will. And your own will is what you have to focus on in that regard. To shift the metaphor just slightly, General Patton once said something like, you can't spend all your time guarding your flanks. If you're moving fast enough, you don't have to guard your flanks. You just haul ass and bypass, as we used to say, and accomplish your mission, get where you're trying to go, work your true will. And that means you just got to ignore a lot of the negative stuff and the negative people. I mean, if we spend all day listing the people,
I mean, most people that I know, people like you, people like my brothers and sisters in the Wolves, people that are in the Freemasons, of which I am a member. We're so busy doing things that are on our list of objectives that interfering with somebody else's life or anything like that. I don't have time. I mean, from the moment I get up to the minute I lay down at the end of the day, and I'm doing something. Always moving forward with my goals. You know, I have fitness goals. I have nutritional goals. I have literary goals. I have musical goals. I have goals with my family and my wife, my friends, my tribe. I mean, that's my life. I'm busy.
Oh man!
The Masons have a saying: if it is to be done, it needs to be done now. And I wrote a poem about that. I don't know if it's in my book, but it's, the Reaper, he's waiting there with his scythe. I mean, he's going to cut you down any moment. You never know when that's going to happen. And what you haven't gotten done by the time he does that, it ain't going to get done.
Well, I've said before, in fact, I've said recently, and it's worth repeating, that, at my point in life, I look back and I see how much I've accomplished, but I'm also looking at the years I've got left and understanding that, I've got X amount of time in anywhere from right now to, I think, a good number of years in the future to attain these goals, not the least of which is the personal transformation that we're talking about.
Absolutely. That's the most important thing. I mean, it's the Odian path is personal transformation. I mean, and this Odian path to me ties in with my Masonic path, because it's all about changing who you are, becoming a better person, becoming a better man, becoming more enlightened, becoming more educated, more spiritually powerful. And that doesn't mean you need that you're spiritually powerful where you're doing things to people. It means that you have attained a greater level of understanding.
Right. You used a term a minute ago that some people may not be familiar with. Everybody knows kind of what an Odinist is, but an Odian is something a bit different. Could you tell us about that?
Well, an Odian emulates Odin. He doesn't necessarily worship Odin. He copies Odin. He walks in Odin's footsteps. He tries to be like Odin. He studies Odin and learns what Odin has done, and then tries to see how he can do the same things. I mean, what the most famous thing that we know about Odin is that he hung on the windswept tree for all of night's 9, wounded by spear and given to Odin. Odin bespoken to Odin a sacrifice, self unto self, upon the tree of which no one knows from what roots it doth rise. They don't give him any bread, they don't give him any water. He looked into the depths and he took the runes up screaming, and then he fell back. And then he learned 9 mighty songs from Bolthorn, Bestla's father, and on and on. And you're like looking at this fantastic poem about this shamanic initiative experience, and like, I can't hang on a tree. I can't 9 days and 9 nights with no food and water, stab myself with a spear. I would die. But I don't think that this is necessarily means that we should actually go out and do that, sacrifice of self unto self. What do you sacrifice? You sacrifice your time. You sacrifice your energy. You put your time and energy into research. You create rituals that are going to raise the woad, the magical energy that you are going to be able to take and assimilate into yourself, that's going to enable you to accomplish the goals that you want to accomplish and to affect the transformation in yourself that you're trying to do. That's what the Odian does, as opposed to an Odinist who simply worships Odin and worships the other gods. And there's nothing wrong with that. Not everybody is interested in the Odian path, and that's fine. The Odian path is largely magical and revolves a lot around ritual and runes, and then we seek to understand what Othrier is. What does that myth mean? What does it mean that he went into the hall of Gunlod and slept with her for 3 nights, and then he drank all the mead, and then he went back to Asgard. This is when you look at the myths, you're looking for metaphors and symbology and allegory, and it may well represent something that actually did happen, but the truths that you're attempting to discern are hidden. And the more you contemplate that, and the more you study that and think about that, write about that, meditate on that, incorporate those mythological elements into your ritual, the more enlightened you become, and the more you understand. And then, in my own experience with the runes, I've spent a lot of time meditating on the runes. I was in the Wolfboons, I was in the Galdra Part of our curriculum was to spend 12 meditations on each rune through the whole Futhark. I did that in the Wolfboon, and I did that in the Galdra, and this was after, of course, scouring Edward Thorson's and Freya Aswyn's books, and assimilating what I could from what they brilliantly wrote. I mean, they formed the foundation of my runic path. Edward Thorson and Freya Aswyn especially. But when you spend all that time, it comes out to over 200 meditations per time through the Futhark. You do it ritually, and you take notes, you draw runes, and attempt to say, well, what are you trying to show me? What do I need to learn about Svehu? What do I need to learn about Urus? And you do that 12 times before you move on to the next rune. And that's in conjunction with the incantations, summoning Odin, calling out to him, trying to, the Wodenaz, which is the inspiration, Viljon, which is the will, the Vihas, which is the holiness. And you're attempting to assimilate this tripartite aspects of Odin into yourself, emulate that, and become that. That's what the difference is with an Odian and an Odinist, an Asatruar, regular Asatruar. They do bloats and feignings and make offerings, and they offer from gratitude. They offer seeking blessing. They offer to create community within the folk, and that's great. But the Odian path, you can be a part of that, and most Odians are. But you're also doing your solo work. And then some of us seek out others who are really into it like ourselves, and then we communicate and bounce ideas off each other and learn things from each other, and you're like, wow, I never even considered that. And then you can incorporate that into your own view of Odian. And one of the things that is so great and appealing to me about Odin is one of the things that I read, I think it was in Runelore by Edward Thorson, was that even though Odin is a god, and he is the one who brought the runes up to share with the gods and humanity, he is still learning. He's still seeking. He's still trying to figure out more. And another thing that Edward Thorson said that stuck into my brain from years ago, and I have a very poor memory, but I remember some things. He said that with each grain of knowledge that you learn about the runes, that which is left yet to be learned expands exponentially. And so you are dealing with a God who is on the same path that you are. You're following him, and he's going. He's not stopping. You can stop it. He's going to keep going. He's never going to be done learning, because you can't learn everything there is to know. Even if you're a God, you can't learn everything that there is. And that's what's so inspiring to me about Odin. I mean, I love the myths about Odin. I love his personality. A lot of people say some things are kind of shady about him, but Odin does what he has to do to get what he wants, and there's no hesitation when Odin figures something out that he wants, and then he learns what it is that he has to do to get it. Can I have a drink, member? Sure, give me one of your eyes. Boom, here you go. I mean, I like to emulate Odin, but I can't imagine doing that myself. I kind of like both my eyes. But he's hardcore. I mean, you can't match him. I mean, maybe Conan might come close to being able to match Odin, but I don't know if I'm there yet.
Yeah, I think that's very well spoken. Definitely, Odin is that kind of guy, and for the handful, relatively speaking, that are attracted to that, I mean, that's what we're all about. I mean, I consider myself that as well. I don't want just to worship Odin. I honor him. I praise him. I raise a horn to him.
Absolutely.
I hold him in highest esteem. But what I really want to do is become more like him. Yes. I can never become like him. He's farther along the curve than I am, like by a lot. But I want to become more than I am. I'm not satisfied with just this bit that I am now. I want to go beyond my current limitations. And to some extent, I think it was that way with me from the very beginning with Odin. I think that desire to overcome and to be more and to be larger than life, I think that's what I wanted from the time I picked up that paperback book on, the Viking, and 3 days later or 2 days later when I set it down, I knew this is what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And it is that essence of Odin. I mean, I respect the other gods and goddesses, and I respect all of the other parts of the also true faith, or whatever you want to call it. But the real thing for me is and always was him, and pushing it and pushing it. So how about the difference between the left-hand path and the right-hand path? Because I think you use the term left-hand path Odian, right?
Oh, that's what they call it, and what I've just said about Odin, the emulation as opposed to worship. That's the difference between the left and the right-hand path. And some people associate the left-hand path with people who are somewhat selfish and nefarious, and that may be the case. They delve off into some of the darker aspects, I guess Satanism, which I don't know too much about, and then the Temple of Set is left-hand path. But it's like you can glance at those things, and they're somewhat interesting, but they don't have the appeal of Odin to me, because I don't know. I regard the gods. I call them in my Rites of the Black Sun. I refer to them as indwellers of my blood. That's where they are. They're out there wherever they are, but they are also in me, because the owned that Odin imparted to Ask and Embla, that spark is in me. one of my favorite sayings from Rob Zombie. I'm sure you're familiar with Rob Zombie. He says in his movie House of a Thousand Corpses, one of his characters says, "These bodies come and go, but blood is forever." And I'm just like, that just like boom. That struck true. I quote that often, and that was an inspiration for my concept of yes. This body is going to die at some point. The soul within me is going to go wherever it needs to go. Maybe it'll go to the time if I've done everything that I need to do to ascend to immortality. I don't think that's going to happen. I think I've got a couple more rounds to go before I even go towards Asgard. I mean, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going to go where I need to go. I know that.
Yeah, there will always be another mission.
Well, the destination is the journey.
Absolutely. When a friend of mine died, a guy named Yost Turner, who was very dear to me, died, and he was a Vietnam vet and was marked by that both in positive and negative ways. But when he died, it was like he wasn't really dead. It's like he got reassigned. It's like I had the feeling like it's like when you walk into the barracks and there's a note on your buddy's cot next to yours, and it says, "Hey, got my orders. I'm out of here." It was that kind of a thing. And I'm not sure how all of this works in detail. I don't think anybody does know all the ins and outs. But the point is that there is purpose, and we have purpose, and we can attune ourselves to those higher purposes and become agents of that which we wish to become or will to become.
Mm-hmm. Well, back to the structure of my book. The first chapter is mythic context, and from a magical perspective, this mythic context is required in order to perform ritual to the fullest extent. You have to have a mythology, and you have to be familiar with the terms and the concepts within that mythology. We have the Germanic soul, the Teutonic soul, consisting of 9 parts. We have the Norns, who are like the fates of Greek mythology. They weave everyone's fate, and they weave the web of weird. We have Orlog, which is one of the most important concepts in the Norse religion. Orlog, if you could compare it to the Hindu, what do they call that?
Karma.
Karma. And one of the things I've found about these concepts that we have in our religion, Orlog is working constantly. Orlog is passed down to you from your family line, and basically the way that I explain Orlog is that what you do today, you're likely to do tomorrow, and your actions set the precedent. And the more you do the same action, the further and further you create a stream bed, and it's like water flowing. And so that's what you're going to continue to do. And some of us are born into Orlog that's not the greatest, and that is closely associated with the Haminya, which is the luck, the repository of soul power and luck, which is determined by our actions. Conscious choice of right action, conscious choice of wrong action, positive, negative. And so if we choose a wrong action consciously, that's going to impact our Orlog negatively. And then we're also going to be drawn down that path virtually irresistibly. And if we want to change that, it requires a conscious act of will. and a great deal of discipline and desire to break out of where you're headed if your orlog is bad. And so these concepts, if you want to change your life, it's part of the transformational process. You need to understand these things like Haminia and orlog and understand, well, how am I going to change who I am? Well, simple in that, I'm going to choose right action. I'm going to do what's right. In application, oftentimes much more difficult. I mean, what are your surroundings? Who are you associated with? What are you doing? Doing the right thing consciously is more difficult for some people than others. But once you start figuring out how this stuff works and doing what needs to be done to create more soul power, more luck, more positive orlog, you'll see it begin to turn around. And then the runes are the tools that you use in addition to understanding the concepts and taking the necessary actions. It's like, well, I'm struggling with this behavior, whatever it is. I eat too much, I smoke cigarettes, or whatever. And so you understand the runes. This particular rune is going to give me the energy and the power that I need to overcome myself. And so you apply that, you take that runic energy into yourself, and you'll find yourself struggling at first, but then you'll all of a sudden, 6 months, a couple years down the road, who knows how long it's going to take, whatever, but you have to stay on the path, one foot after another, your ragged breath, you can't fall. All of a sudden you look at yourself and it's like, wow, I'm not who I was. I've changed myself, because you've got the Asir and the Vanir and the ancestors, the land spirits. You know that they're there. The Disir. The Disir don't. Once you embrace the path, the Disir are going to keep you in the straight and narrow. They don't play. They're going to make your life miserable unless you straighten yourself out. But you've got all of these things working in your favor if you choose that. And that's another thing about the North Path, is it's all about choice. You can choose to go down this path, you know where that's going. You can choose to go down this path, you know where that's going. It might be a real steep incline right away. You might have to struggle, like almost impossibly, but you just keep doing it. And pretty soon it's going to level out. And then pretty soon you're going to be, your orlog has changed, your Haminia has changed. The Disir are blessing you instead of scolding you. So it's just a matter of learning the concepts, using the tools, and applying that knowledge. And then the second chapter in the book is about the runes, and it contains all the traditional rune poems, and then I've added my own, which is I put that at the bottom because, of course, it's last. And then the commentary on each rune is the result of all those meditations I did while I was in the Wolfbund and the Galder Gilding. I took notes, and sometimes you're do your meditation, you sing your Galder, and you focus on the rune and ask to be shown what you need to know, and at the end of your meditation you write your impressions. What have you received from the abyss? But what has come? Sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes you start writing. And sooner or later something comes out, depending on how much time you have. But eventually something is going to come out of that writing. And then over the period of 12 different meditations on 12 different days, you're going to have something. And I've done that twice, once in the Wolfbund, once in the Galder Gilding, and then I edited those notes, put them all together, and then added more to it as I wrote the book, because of course I haven't been stagnant. I've continued, and so that's what my commentary is the result of a lot of meditation, a lot of contemplation. and the singing of the rune poem, the calling of the runes. I mean, people, if somebody could see me by myself doing these things, they'd probably think I was crazy. I enjoy it, and sometimes you get nothing. Other times it's like, wow, that's some great information. And then all that leads up to the third chapter, which is ritual. And you take these concepts, these tools, your knowledge of the gods and goddesses, you study the myths about them. And this is one of the things I learned from the rituals in the Wolfbund and the Galdregildi, the way that they were written. They would harvest terms and statements and verses and characteristics of the gods and other entities and incorporate that into the incantations of the ritual, and it becomes a spell. And the whole ritual revolves around intent, and that's the most important aspect of it. In addition to your serious need, your emotional need to have this thing come into being, you're using these gods as examples. You've taken the things that the myths say about them, and you incorporate that into your incantations and speak them out, speak them into being, and then use all of that into your personal intent, song into the mead, and then drink the mead, drink the magic, drink the runes and the incantations and the intent and the desire into yourself to be assimilated into every fiber and aspect of your being and made manifest in your life. And this is the path to transformation through the Odian path. And I found it to be effective.
Well, obviously so. I'd like to touch on something else that you've got in there. It's re-becoming primeval. What does that mean?
That's another very important aspect of my approach, and I think critical to the application of the rituals and the concepts in the book is the first thing that I say in the re-becoming primeval is that all power is within. We have limitless power, and this is because the entire cosmos is within us. There is no separation anywhere. I mean, we are a microcosm of Yggdrasil. The worlds are in us. The gods are in us. Everything is in us. And at a point in my life, I was struggling, and I had issues that I was having a hard time overcoming, and I couldn't figure out how to do it. I couldn't imagine how it could be done, and I was poring over the Poetic Edda, and trying to get inspiration and try to getting some sort of information that was going to help me. And I really identified with the Siptagsamal, the 9 spells of Groa, and the Fjolstamal, where in the 9 spells, Svipdag, Svip is changing, Dag is day, changing into day, becoming enlightened. That's what his name means. And so he comes to his dead mother and says, "My stepmother has sent me on an impossible mission, and I'm too young to accomplish this mission. I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. Will you speak spells over me to enable me to do this?" And so she speaks spells over him, and his mission is to gain admittance into the Hall of Menglad, who is, of course, Freya. And Svjolsvit is Odin, of course, the giant that is guarding the gates. And so he approaches and he's challenged, and first he says, Odin insults Svipdag and he asks him his name and his lineage, and he gives him some roundabout names. He doesn't answer him directly, and he keeps challenging him, and then he finally says, "I'm who he is," and then he turns around and says that to open the gates, I think it is Svipdog who has come here, and then Freya says, "Open the gates," and she says, "If you're tricking me, greedy ravens are going to gouge out your eyes," but his mission, in order to get to the Hall of Menglad, he had to get a drink from the potion from Sinmara in the underworld, who was an evil hag, and she guarded the potion, which was brewed by Loki, and out of the remorse of dead men's souls, which I thought was like, wow, what does that mean? It was very fascinating. So, but in order to get that drink from Sinmara, he has to bring her a feather from the cock that sits at the top of the tree. But he can't get to the top of the tree until he gets a drink of the potion. So he's like, how do I get that? But he does. And that paradox is what suddenly dawned on me. Everything I need is in me already. And that was the beginning of my change. And another thing about this rebecoming primeval is that when we're born, we haven't been lied to. We haven't been cheated on. We haven't been hurt. We haven't been force-fed all of these lies that our society takes as truth, and this is the way it is. And we don't know any of that. We have no concept of limitation. And one of the things I mentioned in the masking section of there that I took from a book about primeval ancient man was that you, as an ancient man, a primeval man, you knew no limits to your power. You knew that if you imitated and mimicked the thing, that thing would come into being. And as a child, you're yet to be deceived. You're yet to be fooled. You're yet to be told you're not good enough. You can't do that. You're not strong enough. You're not smart enough. So you need to find a way to return to that state of mind and push off all these lies, all these limitations that people have placed upon you, and understand I can do anything that I set my mind to do. And then the third aspect of the rebecoming primeval is that thought is the creator. The gods create. We create. What we say, what we think comes into being. Every action originates as a thought. And so if you want to do great deeds, you must think great thoughts. You must control your thoughts. And I don't know if you've experienced it, I'm sure many people have, is that you're constantly bombarded with self-doubt and negativity and oh, I'm not going to talk to that person. Oh, I can't do that. Oh, I can't do this or that or the other thing. This is negativity. You think you can't do it. What did Henry Ford say? He said, if you think you can't, you're right. So the challenge is to control your thoughts. And that sounds easy, but it's not. You're constantly, it's like I read in the book, it's like a ping pong match, Oh, I'm good. No, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. Oh, yes, I am. And so you're constantly having to control what you think. And then you need to use those thoughts once you've gained control, is to focus on being constructive, being creative. And so that's the whole rebecoming primeval, because primeval man, the primeval version of me, I can do whatever I set my mind to do. No one's lied to me. I've accepted no lies. I've not been hurt by anybody. I believe I can reach the stars because the stars are within me. So this is an attitude that you need to take with you when you enter into ritual. And speaking of ritual, another very important element of that is participation. If you are going to take the time out of your life and go somewhere with your fellow heathens, your fellow Asatruar, and do a ritual, and then just stand there, what are you going to get? I mean, you're going to watch the Goldie or whoever's doing the ritual, that's going to be good. That's going to be inspiring. It's going to be entertaining. You're going to get the horn. You're going to make your toast. You're going to drink in the blessing. But how much more are you going to get if you are participating? If when Steve McNally says Odin, 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 and you're like Odin, Odin, Odin. I mean, you call out the name. You're just standing there like a bump on a log, embarrassed, self-conscious. Let it out. I mean, you watch any videos of churches like a black church. Those people are dancing. They're yelling. They're getting down. I mean, they're not self-conscious. They're getting something out of it. You're going to get out of whatever you put into the ritual is what you're going to get out of it. I mean, you're obviously needing something. You're wanting something. You're going there. Who cares what anybody else thinks about what you're doing? You get what you need. And I tell you what, you know this. People enjoy watching other people speak. They like watching people sing. I love it when somebody will stand up by a fire. There's no electronics, no nothing, a cappella or with a guitar, and they'll sing. That's the greatest. When you're in a ritual and you make your toast or you shout out the name of Odin or Freya, Frigga, whatever, nobody's going to think, oh, that person is stupid. They're like, yeah, they like that. I mean, and that's inspiring. I mean, that's power. You get the voice brings things into being. I mean, you know those gods love that. I mean, they're seeing people actually doing something about getting what they need to improve their lives. Makes me excited.
Wow. Very good, Troy. Okay, one really last big thing that I want to cover because it sounds so intriguing is your Black Sun rituals. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? I thought that was a very interesting idea.
The Black Sun, and I'm going to tell you something. I don't know what other people's definition of the Black Sun is, and I don't care. The Black Sun is extremely powerful. It has a black center, and that to me means multiple things. First of all, in Niflheim, there is the spring of Hevergelmer, the roaring cauldron. And from out of Hevergelmer issues forth the 12 Elevogs, the rivers of poison and rime. And they travel across, there's 12 of them, and the Black Sun has 12 Suila runes. There's a comparison there. And those 12 Elevogs flow across Niflheim and out into the Nunga Gap. And I reason and make up, I've read it nowhere, that if there are 12 rivers of ice coming from out of the world of ice, there must be also 12 rivers of flame coming from a roaring furnace in Muspelheim. And so these 12 rivers of ice and fire, 24 runes, they meet. And from the meeting of fire and ice, consciousness comes into being. You have Alhambla and Buri and all that stuff. And that's the beginning of our universe. So that's one aspect of the Black Sun. And the Black Sun I see as you'll hear in the Voluspa, the great Godhead that governs over all. That's what the Black Sun is. This what a god is, I don't know. I mean, we make anthropomorphic images of them to give ourselves something to grasp onto, but that's not what they are. I don't know what they are. But so the Black Sun is an image, it's a symbol, and it can represent that thing that creation issues forth from. And at the same time, the Black Sun also represents the throne of divinity, which the altar is. The center of the Black Sun is the altar. The altar is the throne of divinity. The throne of divinity is Odin. And in the Grimnisimal, there are 12 gods and 12 thrones, and they surround the 13th, which is Odin in the middle. And those gods are doing Odin's bidding according to his will. He delegates his authority through them. Freya and Njord and Forseti and Uther, each according to their characteristics and their personalities. That's how Odin delegates his authority. And the Black Sun also is cognate with the inner eye, which is the crux of the Odinic mystery, is that all power is from within. All power is his single eye, is his mind's eye, and that's where we conceive, that's where we visualize, and that's where all of our magical ability comes from. And that's what the myth of Odin and Mimir's Well and Odin's single eye is telling us, that all power is from within. This is where the magic comes from, and that's why I am so drawn to the Black Sun, because it's multiple levels of meaning. And in my rites of the Black Sun, I want to use all of those levels of meaning at the same time, so that when I envision myself doing these rites, I am below, I am here, I am above, I'm standing at the throne of Odin, before Odin. And each of those gods has different personalities and different characteristics and different abilities. And when I make an offering and call that god, I am bringing those characteristics into myself, the same as an Odian does with Odin, but this is individualized throughout the pantheon that is listed in the Granissimo. It's kind of a unique idea. I don't know if anybody's done something like that before, but you know, I didn't want to just rewrite Thorson's and Asquin's and Kilsvog's things. I mean, I'm inspired by them. I read their things, and they're brilliant, more educated than I am, but you know, whatever. I'm doing what works for me. And so I wanted to come up with something original, something new, something that isn't just regurgitated over and over again. You know, read this book, read that book, and reword it a little bit, and then present it as your own. I wanted to come up with an idea of my own, and the Black Sun calls to me, and I can probably find more comparisons and more correlations to the Black Sun. It's just a extremely powerful image to me that inspires me.
Right. And, you know, some people are going to be saying, oh, well, come on, man. You know, whoever came up with the Black Sun couldn't have been thinking all of that sort of stuff. And my response to that is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
That's irrelevant.
You know, it could actually be seen a number of different ways. It's not a simple thing that, yes, this is the one and only true explanation for the Black Sun. No, none of this stuff we're talking about works like that. It's continually created, continually being recreated to meet our needs and to match the truth with a capital T.
Exactly, and you know, I see people discussing the runes, and you know, this book is better than that book, and oh, this author's this and this author's that. It's like, well, let's take a look at where the information comes from. We've got what, 600 or so rune stones in Sweden and Finland and Norway and stuff, and they have runic inscriptions, usually telling about what somebody did and where they died. And then we've got some old manuscripts here and there floating around. We've got the rune poems, and then we have references to them, like in the Havamal, Sigdrivamal, and other poems. And that's it.
Yeah.
That's all we have to work with. So, you know, we have the line that came down from Thorson's Professor Palomi to Thorson. And Thorson has of course studied Kummer and von List, but what Thorson has written, he has built upon the rune poems, upon the stuff, the references, and with the applications in Sigdrivamal, Havamal, all that, Kummer, Guido von List, and through his own study, his own meditations, and he's created a great body of lore So, if I'm going to say, well, that book is you need to look at the sources. Okay, well, you look at the sources, and you read the rune poems, and some of it makes sense, some of it doesn't. Like what's the one about the sheath is for swords? What does that mean? So it's like you have to continue building, and you have to. I view the runes, and probably not very many people are going to agree with this, but I view the runes as the sigils of entities so ancient that we know nothing about them. And this is reflected in Tivas, Tyr, Ingvaz, Ingvi Freyr. We can associate Berkana with Freya or the birch goddess. We can associate Freya with Fehu. But I believe that they are sentient, and if you want to approach them, you can approach them in a ritualistic way. Speak to them as if they're going to understand you, and I believe that they do. And so you approach them in reverence, in awe, respect. Make offerings. Teach me. Show me. Show me who you are. Show me what I need to know. And I believe that they will speak to you. I mean, they certainly have power. I mean, how can something have power without life, without sentience? I mean, everything in my mind, everything's alive. The rocks, the trees, the planets, the stars. It all has a consciousness. Really, that's animism, I believe.
Yeah, I can tell. I like the multidimensionality that you give to the runes, because I think that's the only way to go. And I've said to this in other contexts before, and hope everybody hasn't heard this a dozen times from me. But when people say, "Well, this rune means this, and this rune means that," I say, no, it doesn't. It's much more complex than this. You can say, this tells me more about this rune. You can look at the rune poems and, okay, here's something we can work with it that way. We look for something else. We say, well, okay, I'm going to use my own personal meditations, and you do that. And you can say, well, I'm looking at the linguistic meaning of the rune and what that particular item did in our culture. All of those are true. You can describe runes, but rune means mystery.
Right.
It's going to remain ultimately a mystery. You can describe it infinitely and continue on that route. It's a lot like the idea of transformation. It unfolds and unfolds and unfolds and unfolds and unfolds and unfolds. I think the same is true of the runes. They remain mysteries, but we can learn more and more about them and internalize that inside ourselves.
And they aren't static. The gods aren't static. I mean, the information that we have in the rune poems and the information about in the myths, that was, a long time ago. I mean, are you exactly the same as you were 20 years ago? We're talking thousands of years. I think maybe Odin might have learned a few things in the last couple thousand years. He's not exactly the same. He's still Odin. I'm still Troy, but I'm not the same as I was 20 years ago when Dave Taggart came out of the basement and handed me What Is Also True by Steve McNallen. I mean, I'm much different. I'm much better. My life is so much better since I have embraced this path. And it was not an instantaneous transformation. It was a lot of hard work and took many years. And right now, my life is better than it's ever been. I'm happy, more happier, and things are going well for me, better than it ever. Sometimes it's almost like, I like waiting for something to happen, because it's too good. But I'm not complaining. I mean, when I get up in the morning, the first thing I do is express gratitude, because when you express gratitude, that lets whatever powers that be know he likes what I'm giving him. I want more of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great. Troy, we're kind of at the point that we're going to need to wrap it up. So what I would like to do now is give our listeners a little idea on, tell us just a little bit about your performances that you do, right? Like you did for the one that I saw a couple of years back. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's done under the name of Odian's son, which is a name that I harvested from Edward Thorson's rune lore. Way back when. I've called myself that for 20 years now. And every time I tell it to somebody, what? And they say, well, what does that mean? Wod, magical power, and as master of sun. I am the son of the master of power. I'm the son of Odin. I mean, and that doesn't mean that I'm all this and all that. It's like this is the path that I'm on. This is what I'm attempting to become. This is what I want to project. And what I've done with my performance is it revolves around Odin, of course. And I have some poems about Tyr. I have a poem about Adrian Rand, one about Balder, but I begin my performance as a ritual with the Gungnir hallowing. I sing the rune poem. I sing the Futhark. I invoke Odin. I invoke the moon, and then I go into the rest of it. And oftentimes, depending on the setting, it will be an actual ritual. I use my PA and my microphone, and I have ambient sound. I play my drum, and I invoke Odin. I invoke the other gods. I have a song to Freya, a song to Freyr. And the last thing that I do in my performance is I have an altar with mead on it. The mead is blessed, and then it's distributed among the audience. And if it's a really small setting, my wife helps me with this and brings the horn to each person, and I explain to them what is happening. I want you to put your intent into this. It's got the power of the gods. It's got the power of the runes. And now we've raised this woad, and now your personal intent put into the horn and drink into yourself. And people understand this. And so far, the response has been extreme reverence. And they all, I mean, my audiences are heathen, so of course they understand what's going on. But it's a profound and deeply spiritual performance, and it's show, of course, but it's serious. I mean, I dress up like a shaman. I put ashes on my face, and I believe that's part of the ritual. You transform. You're entering the sacred, and that's part of masking. You change your persona. You put a mask on. You put makeup on your face. You put ashes on your face. You instantly become someone else. I remember one time I was at a Arizona Kindred bloke with Balgard Murray. That helmet he has, and he says, when I put this helmet on, I see through the eyes of the ancestors. And so that stuck in my mind for all these 20-something years since I've been down there and seen him. And that's part of my understanding of what happens when you put a mask on, when you change yourself, when you put your ritual attire on. You're standing with the ancestors, you're standing with the gods, you're standing with the land spirits. And you're seeing things the way that they saw them. Of course, you're in the modern times still, but it's a change in perception, a change in persona, and that prepares you for the final and most important act of every ritual, which is the drinking of Othrider, the sacred mead. That's the most profound and holy act in all of the Norse religion, is when that horn meets your lips and you take in that precious mead, stolen from Gunlod, gotten at great price from Mimir, and infused with the power of the runes. I mean, look at all these three Odinic accomplishments. the runes, Othrier, and the drink from the well of wisdom. And that's all incorporated into that mead. That's what the mead is when we drink it. It's powerful.
Now you've got a gig coming up at a Viking festival soon, don't you?
Yes, the Northwest Viking Festival in Rainier, Washington. And it's Rainier is a very small town, and it's going to be big. And it's in the park, which is a huge park, right along the main drag. You drive through Rainier, you cannot miss it. It's right there. There's going to be guys in full Viking garb, hitting each other with swords and beating the crap out of each other. There's going to be all kinds of food. There's going to be all kinds of vendors selling anything from horns to Viking era clothing to modern day vendors selling whatever. I'll be doing some rituals. I'll be doing a performance. Elvin LaFay Herman is a Saith Kona. She's going to do Sather. And then there's a band going to be playing, an Irish band in the evening. And a lot of people are going to be camping there overnight. So I imagine it's going to be pretty wild. And then we're going to do it again on Sunday, but it'll probably be a little bit less rambunctious than on Saturday. But it's there's going to be a lot of people. And last year, apparently I wasn't there last year, but there was like 2,000 people, 1,500, 2,000 people came through there over the weekend. And from what I see on the thread of the people that are involved in the festival, they're expecting 4,000 or 5,000. So it's going to be quite the shindig.
Well, that sounds really great. I know we're going to have a number of mutual friends there, so that's cool.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
So,
go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to mention the Freemasons, which a lot of people are like, you're what? So how does that fit with being a heathen, with being also true? Well, I'm an Odian. Odian seeks knowledge from whatever source. I mean, if I see something that is useful and true, just because it's somebody that else is saying it, I'm not going to discount it. I embrace that. And the Masons are a fraternity, but they're also a mystery school, and they impart their knowledge in a system of degrees. You come in as an entered apprentice, then you become a fellow craft, and then you become a master. And I have found that through the memorization of the rituals, which are considerable amount of memorization, that when I was going about my everyday life, I find that those memories affect how I see things and how I respond and how I act. And so that's one of the things that I learned immediately was through the memorization, which I memorized a lot of the poetic edda and things like that. You change your brain. You actually your brain actually physically changes with each memory. So if you want to change yourself, memorize what you want to become. And so my Masonic mentor, taught me how to memorize things, and I memorized a considerable amount of information, and I found it to be very useful. And a lot of the teachings, although they are taught with Abrahamic symbology, Solomon apparently, Masonry originally came from ancient Egypt. And then, of course, it was brought into Israel by Moses. And then Saul changed all the imagery and made it into that. But the way that I view things is that I am above these superficial things, and I'm looking at the truths, the teachings, the mystery school aspect of it towards greater knowledge and ascension. So, you know, when people say God, they automatically think of the God of the Bible. But when I say God, that's not what I mean. God is the great Godhead who governs over. I don't know what that is. I can perceive it as the black sun, but this it's like the term God, the name God has been hijacked. The narrative has been hijacked, and I don't need to embrace that myself. I can speak to my Christian friends, my Christian family, and I can talk about God. They're talking about what they're talking about, and I'm talking about what I'm talking about, and it really doesn't matter because it's the same thing.
The word God is a Germanic word, actually.
Right.
Yeah. So we're good. So exactly. So you mean to say that your local lodges are not part of the globalist conspiracy that's just set at the FEMA camps?
I've been a Mason for about 7 or 8 years now, and I'm going to be the master of my lodge this coming year, and I haven't found any Illuminati or anything like that. I was like kind of disappointing. I was kind of hoping to get in on that, but all I've seen is really good men. I mean, these guys are awesome. I mean, they help out in the community. They help each other out. They're wise. They're successful, and I wouldn't know these guys if I wasn't a Mason. I would never have access to that kind of wisdom and experience. I mean, I went to a Masonic retreat in the middle of Washington over in Pasco at the Red Lion. It was all weekend long. My lodge paid for it, all my food, everything, and there were classes Saturday, Sunday, all day long, and guys from all over the state. You don't even know them, but you're a Mason, and so they're talking to you, and they're teaching, and of course. I ended up sitting with this old guy that was an old biker because he could tell I was a biker, and we talked about Harleys, and I mean, just good people, and there's no, it's Masonic. It's not there's no politics, there's no religion. It's just all about being better men, becoming better men, and that's what I think any path should be trying to accomplish, is becoming better. So I enjoy it. I really love it. I mean, I like all that mystery school stuff. I like metaphor. I like analogy. I like symbols. I like Kenningar. All this stuff is just, the things I have to do in my mundane life. It's like, I'm always thinking about this kind of stuff, but I'm doing that.
All right. Well, Troy, I'd like to get Dave with us for just a second and see if he's got anything in the chat that we need to address, or if he has any questions or comments. And knowing him, I think he probably will. So let's find out.
You guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Beautiful. Just making sure I didn't have any trouble here. Now, Mr. Troy, I was really enjoying this episode here. You are truly a fascinating individual, big time.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a guy I'm a Seti and Asatru, which I'm kind of, you could almost say that I'm the polar opposite of left-hand path. We are very much right-hand path, you could say, because we observe order and we observe, these. You're talking about Orlog earlier, and we are very much about order and stuff like that. So when I hear somebody, and I'm sure you can empathize with this. When I hear somebody say, I'm left-hand path, I'm already assuming, here comes the atheist talking points. Here comes the, I'm sure you've heard that a lot. All the gods aren't really real. I'm just, but you really surprised me when you said you were an Odian, which is, I guess you would say it's a flavor of left-hand path. I wouldn't say it's necessarily left-hand path. But then you go on to talk about how you have reverence for the gods, and you speak of the gods as they are also outer entities as well as entities from within. And then you go on, you speak about afterlife and like all these stuff. So you have a very, very fascinating gnosis of your path of Odianism insofar as you kind of blend traditional theism along with your Odian kind of individuated path. Am I accurate there?
Yes, and you know, it's the result of 20 years of studying and meditation and doing rituals and doing rituals with other people, and the wolves of Vinland have been a great influence on me. I mean, there's some brilliant minds in the wolves of Vinland, and you know, the discussions that take place at their moots. You're talking with some brilliant folks, and it really has had an impact on me, and opened doors in my mind talking to these people, and I've been told by a few of them that I've said some things that they hadn't considered. So, you know, it's give and take, and those are the kind of people you want to surround yourself with, is people who are giving and as well as taking, and you're constantly learning, and you're constantly being challenged by. So, and I each of them had their own gnosis as well, but we have this commonality in the wolf cult, the wolf god. That's the thread that binds us together, apart from our brotherhood, sisterhood, and the oath that we've sworn.
Yeah, I really enjoy that. That's actually very in line with some of the. I have a lot because I've been podcasting for so long, and been in the various communities. I got a lot of younger guys that come from like checkered past, like I did, and they reach out to me a lot, and I try to be like a big brother to them because I know what it's like coming from a busted home, and we many of us, especially us guys that come from the millennial era, have this kind of background. But the one thing that, and this was just what you were just saying, what I say to them is surround yourself with people that are smarter than you.
Absolutely.
That's something that I've always tried to do.
Yeah, sometimes it's a little bit intimidating, but unless you push the boundaries of your knowledge and experience, you're going to stagnate and you're not going to grow. So you always want to be pushing the envelope and at the edge of your comfort zone.
Now, I do have one question regarding Odianism and left-hand path. I've come to find that I have a few friends that are of left-hand path, and they very much like when I do criticisms of left-hand path because it gets their brain turning. They like to debate, and they're guys like me that don't take things personally. But I have found that a lot of the as with everything, you have your elite top people that are really smart and develop ideas and kind of drive it, and then you have your bottom level of people that kind of don't really you do it right, I guess you could say. And I found that a lot of the people that I feel aren't doing it right have this kind of rejection of hierarchy, this kind of like anarchist kind of view and stuff like that. What would you say to them, to people that kind of have this worldview of this kind of, I guess you could say, anarchist worldview or anti-hierarchy worldview, which a lot of times results in them not being able to get along with a kindred or get along with an organization, and they kind of just reject people telling them what to do, and they reject hierarchy. And your Odian worldview, is there still a place for observing and respecting hierarchy?
Oh, absolutely. It's based on merit. I mean, it doesn't take long in a conversation to figure out who is the more knowledgeable, the more intelligent individual. That doesn't mean that if someone is smarter than you or knows more than you, that you're stupid. But if you encounter someone who knows more than you, is more intelligent than you, quicker, wittier, then you should embrace that and learn from them. I mean, you can only improve. I mean, you don't want to seek the lowest common denominator and surround yourself with morons. All you're going to do is decrease your own intelligence in that way. And it's the same thing like if you find somebody who is stronger than you are, if they know more about working out or whatever. I mean, you don't want to go out and work out with someone who is not applying themselves. You want to go with people that are accomplishing something. You can take one look at somebody and ascertain in a second, yeah, this guy knows what he's doing. I'm going to ask him. I'm going to hang out with him, and I'm going to listen to what he's got to say. I think if you reject authority, reject hierarchy, it reflects an inner uncertainty. You haven't got confidence in the path, because you haven't come to a place in your learning and along your path where you are comfortable in the knowledge of what works for you. And that takes time. And if once you have reached a place where you're comfortable and you don't need to prove to anybody that you're right, and you have found something that works for you, then you're can relax and you're confident. You're not so busy trying to disprove this or show everybody how independent and how you don't need this or that or the other. I mean, I have reached a place in my life where I'm definitely willing to learn, and I'm always wanting to learn. And I see people talk, I read what they've got, and some of it I agree with, some of it I don't. Some is useful, some's not. I take what works for me. I keep what I have come up with for myself, and if I find that it doesn't work, then you need to have the mindset to be able to let that go. You need to know when to admit that what you're doing is not right, that it's invalid.
Yeah.
So I think these people that are anarchists and are rejecting all sorts of authority or hierarchy are just at a place where they haven't achieved confidence, and they aren't comfortable with who they are and what they are trying to become. They haven't attained the level that is going to enable them to just be comfortable with who they are.
Very cool. Very cool. I know we're running over here. I just wanted to say, I'm gonna get after we get off of here. I'm gonna pick up your book. Is it available on Amazon?
Yes, sir.
I am really excited to read the Black Sun Ritual now. I'm really pumped about this.
And tell us a little bit about your other things, your musical productions and so forth. Where can people locate some of your other enterprises?
Me?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh, well,
You've got. I mean, you've got your books. You've got Ethereal Darkness, which was your first book, right?
yeah.
Book of Poems, and then the one that we've been talking about all evening. Rise, Runes and Ritual.
Yeah.
And don't you also have some musical productions that are available? Or am I mistaken?
Well, I've got several CDs. I've got the Have 'Em All. It's available on Amazon. Under Wodina's son. And the Have 'Em All has me doing all the instruments on there, and I do some speaking parts and some chanting, and then it's got Dave Taggart narrating several parts of the poem as well. I really like that production. I mean, because Dave invited me up to Indianapolis. I was down in Tennessee at the time. And he was going to come up and record an album. I'm like, okay. And then, of course, it just so happened that Black Sabbath was playing, and my friend Kevin Hummel was up there. Right. And so, I'm flying up to Indianapolis. I'm going to Black Sabbath with Kevin. And then I'm going to record this album, too. So we started that process, and it took much longer than we anticipated. But we got it done, and that's available on there. I've got another one called Incantation that has some collection of stuff I've done over a long period of time, not connected to each other, but some 5 tracks on that. And then the latest CD is called Better Fallner, and that has my Hymn to Freya, Hymn to Freyr, the Rune poem, Futhark, and some other things on it. There's 15 tracks on there. I do Nietzsche's Unknown God, a poem that I wrote called An Invocation to the Moon, which is half my stuff, half stuff from the Alvisamal, Among Men thou art hight moon, among the gods mild light, all that stuff. Just a bunch of Odinic, Edaic stuff. And then I on that one, I have taken some music from this guy he's got a bunch of stuff out on YouTube. He calls himself Iron Cthulhu Apocalypse, and he does ambient stuff. So I wrote him and I said, hey, I want to make this CD, and I need some stuff behind me. Can I use your stuff? And he goes, yeah, just give me credit. So all of the ambient sounds on Vedder Fallner is from Iron Cthulhu Apocalypse. And then I speak and play my drum and my horn and stuff like that over top of that. So those all three are available on Amazon. And then, of course, the books are. And then I don't have a website for this stuff, but if anybody wants this, they can contact me on Facebook or whatever, and we'll make arrangements, and I'll get one out. These are $20.
And worth every bit of it. At least my tank top was. Like I say,
this is my art. This little guy on the ship there. I call it the waters of Black Darkener, which is the waters of Amsvartner, which is the lake in the underworld that has the island of Helesi, where Fenris is chained down there. So that's the inspiration. Of course, it's also inspired by Scandinavian rock art.
Right. All right. Well, Troy, it's been a very, very productive and fun show. I think we've all enjoyed this, and I hope that all of our listeners have. If they haven't, then really they ought to reconsider. So thanks for being here with us. I'm gonna wrap it on up now, and we'll head on out. But thanks for being here, and we'll do this again sometime.
Oh yeah, it's always great talking to you, Steve. And we got to do that show you were talking about, that Freyfax a couple years ago. Put it together. We'll put together some big production.
Sounds good. All right.
Be a lot of fun. All right. Thank you very much.
All right. And so, signing off, just want to give a plug to Votan Network, which is a religious, spiritual, cultural, metapolitical, and political network for invoking the might and wisdom of Votan for the awakening of our folk. You can find Votan Network in the form of Votan Network Update on Facebook if you haven't been kicked off of there yet. And you can find Votan Network on Gab and MeWe and VK as well. And you can reach me at wolfagemedia@gmail.com, where you can also order my book and a lot of other stuff. That's all for tonight, folks. Keep your powder dry, your cupboard full, your spouse happy, your children close, your data out of the hands of the deep state, and love life in Midgard, for it is a wondrous gift. Good night.